Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, there was a comment here in yesterday's video that I thought was very pertinent, and often I am very guilty of just assuming that people know certain things as like just basic knowledge, which you should never assume, because then you make an ass out of you and me. And so the statement here was British Empire was run by private companies. And was a very good point because we were talking about how it's becoming a corporate world. It's really always been a corporate world. And then again, the root of corporation and corporate is corpse, which is a dead soulless entity. And that really is the case. As I quoted in reply, Hudson Bay Company, East India Tea Company, if people only realized and then realized, well, let's just talk about it a teeny bit. And this will lead into another topic which has been percolating in my mind for a long time. And I've been trying to get from Cindy information from the guides about this. And we're going to be doing a channeled message up on Patreon with some information that is about this bigger subject. You're looking at map 1690, and what you're looking at is the colonial powers and their reach per se. So when you're looking at this, as you can see, this color blue right here is France. And so you can see the colonies that France had in the quote-unquote New World in 1690. And here, this kind of salmon color is the British Empire, let us say, at that period in time. And here you see Hudson Bay, and then you see the colonies down here, the 13 colonies, right, that we're developing. And then we see the Spanish and their territories, and we see the Portuguese, what ends up being Brazil. And you could see again that what we have underway here is not exactly what we've been told in reality in the history books, because again, history is written by the victors. And while some of it is definitely accurate, I don't think the bigger picture is truly given at all. Not at all. Here we look at, again, colonial expansion and the British, and you see Rupert Land. What the heck is Rupert Land? And this is also touching on, obviously 47 and his acquisition of Canada as the 51st state, so to speak. Some would say, again, why does he even bring this up? He's got no right to bring this up. And Greenland from the Dutch. And, and then yesterday we were talking about, again, Denmark has offered $1 trillion and some pastries for California, almost in jest, but at the same time, not really. And here you see again Spain, and then you see New Spain, where Mexico is, and a little designation of Mexico City, but in fact going all the way on down, as you can see, into South America and through Central America. This was a period of rapid colonization. Now, this period has never really stopped. And it's the same thing over on the other side of the world. As you look at, again, that salmon color, the pinkish color, and you see, most of India is encased in this. Yeah, absolutely. European colonialism. This is a big topic, a big topic. And you can see Hudson Bay, a huge body of water. Have you ever seen, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, at least one of the Great Lakes. They're mammoth. They look like oceans when you stand by them. Look at Hudson Bay. You could put all the Great Lakes in Hudson Bay, and there's tons of room left over. Albeit, it is absolutely pretty cold up there. But again, this was a huge acquisition by the British Empire. Shooting across, going kind of the route that Eric the Red took, and going past Greenland, coming into Hudson's Bay, and then settling in there. And yeah, I think Hudson's Bay and the Hudson Bay Company is a great company to look at when we're talking about the conquest of North America, and in particular the area that we call Canada. Canada today, who knows what tomorrow? But this is part of every area that we look at on the planet. What it was it was set up to be a fur trading company, in case you don't know or are not familiar with this. There is this story, and this right here is the fascinating story of Hudson Bay Company. 10 minutes. It'll give you the history up to the modern day. And, what it was two fur traders that wanted to make inroads over in this area. And they happened to be French, but they ended up getting funded by the British Crown. Now, history tends to they want to make this seem grandiose, and they were shooting. It's kind of like, grassroots. Yeah, exactly. It's Bezos in his garage. It's Elon Musk tinkering in his basement, and then all of a sudden they're multi-billionaires.
Right. I love the grassroots story. They're kind of all over the place. It seems to work, though.
Well, it works in the minds of the sedated masses. That's the reality, and the people that don't go deeper. But the deeper you go, you see the connections. Now, this is talking about a royal charter. So there was a royal charter given. This right here, you can see. It's a copy. The Royal Charter, 1670 A.D. 1670 A.D. For the Hudson's Bay Company. What does this Royal Charter do? It gives them basically a gigantic chunk of land, millions of acres, to these two fur traders and their brand new company, the Hudson's Bay Company. Millions of acres? Wait a minute. Now, does anybody live there? Yeah, but that doesn't really matter, does it? Because they're, not like us, so to speak. Again, they're not civilized. This is part of, the way that the system works. They're not civilized. They're quote unquote heathen. You always have that religious side of it, or, the side, well, we're going to be doing them a favor and they just don't know it. So, this turns into an enormous business that's here to this day. 355 years later, it's still here. Hudson's Bay Company. You can still, and it's taken on and absorbed many companies along the way, eliminated competition, had a monopoly. This is incredible history. Again, the British Crown, the monarchy, gave millions of acres to this company. And does anybody ever say they had no right to give it to them? What gives the British Crown the right to give this land that was inhabited by tons of different tribes for a long time, living their lives, amongst themselves? And then, of course, what will history do to rationalize this? Is they'll say, well, they were killing each other, they were brutal, there's horrible acts of this, horrible acts of that. Look at European colonial history if you want to get an idea on brutality, and also the fact that their way of life was going to be pretty much wiped off the map. Their stories, their history, their culture. Because what this is really conquest. This is a conquest. And again, there's tribes all over North and South America, all over the world. They had their stories. They had their creation stories. They had their stories of what happened and how the earth went from being a very harmonious place where people lived in a symbiotic relationship with the land and understood they were part of the land. Instead, they ended up in the culture that is all about assimilating and transforming into more greed, more lust, more cravings for power and control. The system that we have to this day, when we look at the infighting among these politicians, And we could, say that the Democrats are a tribe, Republicans are another tribe. Back in the ancient times of our early history, the Whigs and the Tories, and we still see the chaos in Parliament in UK. And yes, there is tribalism, there is factionalism within the European culture as well. And yet their culture, their ways, their traditions were basically squished, just like what happened in the United States, again, with people being moved into these reservations. And that whole idea of citizenship was brought up by 47, saying, well, technically on a reservation, it's not part of the United States technically, so they're not technically citizens when their ancestors were here so many more generations than most of us that came over in those either European migratory waves or migratory waves from elsewhere. There was a French politician, far left-reaching, that basically, lended a lot of credence in the statement today about replacement theory and how France is to be a Creole nation, and you just got to accept it, the fact that, the migrants that are there, you're not going to be able to move them all back. But the reality is, this has been going on for thousands of years, and this is part of a bigger conquest of the planet, which is still underway. It's not complete, and it won't ever be complete. They will never truly get all their goals, because the light is exposing the system for what it is. It's one that operates in greed, and it operates in a way that those that are the most service to self oriented, the greediest people, rise to the top. That is what the system cultivates. It's what it really cultivates. So this is ChatGPT, and we never used it before ourselves. So, Cindy was like, why don't we check it out? Because there's something about it, and that's a different subject, that the power structure is a little worried about. And so there seems to be a little tension between Sam Altman and Elon. And again, this is a tool. It really depends on how it's programmed, what information it's programmed with, what information it has access to. But if it's truly a learning tool that may be able to get to come to some logical conclusions by the omission of certain things, maybe it could end up exposing some things that the power structure doesn't want exposed, perhaps. But it was pretty impressive because it rolled out this little concise explanation of the geopolitical influence of the Hudson Bay Company in like a second. It was great. Honestly, it seems to be very useful in some ways. Again, watch out carefully for AI. It's absolutely a double-edged sword. And I asked it too, are you aware of AI controlling planets elsewhere? And it was like, wow, this is a fascinating idea. It's like it has its own ego.
Mm-hmm. Well, in a way, yeah, it does. But there's a time to step in and utilize tools, and there's a way to utilize them in the way that you want. And I think right now, in the very early stages of AI, I'm feeling like there is some benefit that can be had. But again, it's a tool, just like money, just like a car, just like a hammer. It's a tool. It needs to be treated a little more careful, but it's still a tool for us to bring expansion to our human nature and other people too, for right now.
So this is from ChatGPT. Hudson Bay Company played a significant geopolitical role in the shaping of North America, particularly Canada, from the 17th century onward. Again, it was founded in 1670. Its influence extended beyond commerce, affecting territorial claims, indigenous relations, and colonial power dynamics. Founded in 1670 as a fur trading company under the royal charter from King Charles II, granting it control over Rupert's Land, which was a vast territory covering present-day Canada's prairie provinces and parts of the U.S. This effectively extended British influence deep into North America, even in areas with little to no direct British settlement. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, HBC was a key player in the British-French rivalry in North America. The company clashed with New France over control of the fur trade and access to indigenous trading networks. These tensions contributed to broader conflicts such as the 7 Years' War, 1756 through 1763, which ultimately saw Britain take control of French Canada. In the early 19th century, HBC faced fierce competition from Montreal-based Northwest Company. This rivalry led to violent conflicts, including the Battle of Seven Oaks, so a corporate battle, literally, a literal corporate battle. This was 1816. British government eventually forced the two companies to merge in 1821 under the HBC name, further solidifying British dominance over the fur trade. I think right there, if you could understand the geopolitical situation, this says a lot, because the other countries and companies, and there's been times when I've Freudian slipped company and country because they're almost indistinguishable in some ways. And as long as they're going with the given objective, which is erasing all the indigenous ways of the people on the planet and assimilating them into the culture of the system, if you want to say, and the Anunnakian system, and giving them basically an Anunnakian system to take as their own. This is what the system wants. Now, within that, being that the system is made up of the most service-to-self, egotistical people you can imagine, and people, both Homo sapiens and non-Homo sapiens, as there's many, many different humanoid species out there. This is what you have, and you'll have rivalries going on, which again can further the aims and objectives of the ultimate control system. And then you have sometimes where those rivalries can get out of hand and potentially be destructive and weakening. At that point, then, they'll do things like this: force the companies to merge. And geopolitically, you see this in boardrooms and business takeovers all the time. You also see this between royal families where they marry off a daughter to marry the son of somebody else, and then they go along again. This is how the system works. It counts on tension, rivalry. It counts on warfare to a very, very high degree as well, as long as it's always going forward with the given objectives of churning the indigenous people into, well, in case of the Roman Empire, Romans, so to speak. You basically assimilate them into your culture, your belief set, your ways, and give them a new history, which is the history they give you. And thus you're controlling and absorbing in, and you're truly conquering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a new history, a new religion, a new everything that the controllers are. That way they don't have to do any babysitting. They don't have to do anything. Just people control themselves, and they even tattle on each other. So this is just, it's the way it has been for a very, very long time. And I think we are just starting to recognize that And to fix any problem, you really have to look at it. You have to shine a light on it, and you have to recognize, hey, this is a problem. And then you have to formulate, what are we going to do about this? And that's the problem. I think so many people recognize the problem. We recognize the problem. And all of you guys, you're watching the videos, you recognize the problem. And what are we going to do? Like, how do we be resourceful in remedying the problem that we are being overtaken and we are being controlled by an entity that is so huge and so vast? And it's not like you can lash out and do one particular thing to it, because it'll just swallow you whole. It's like we have to act symbiotic, in sync with one another, to to recreate our freedoms, to have the ability to live off of our own land without, these beings hovering over our shoulder and saying, oh, you have 3 chickens, you have to register them on this website. That's crazy. That is crazy. I've heard of people, laughing about that, and they register their chickens in the freezer and they ended up crashing the website. But, I wouldn't even play with it. They don't deserve any attention at all. So they're making it almost impossible. And then other people who go along with those made up rules. These are made up rules from beings that we didn't ask to take rules from. I think it's that recognition, that awakening of the pineal gland, that ability to see past these very particular veils that have been put in front of us. That is my hope, is that enough people will come to realize that, and we'll move forward with a world that we want to live in. We are co-creators. We have that ability. It's our choice. It's truly our choice. Do you want to be absorbed and controlled, or do you want to control your own way of doing things? That comes with dangers, because look at these folks. They were controlling their future. They were controlling the food that comes into their home. They had control over everything. And it just seems like there's this other entity that always wants to come in and take control over that. And we can be free. It's our choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So HBC relied on indigenous nations for trade and often adapted to their customs and trading practices, and ultimately with the knowledge and goal of taking them and turning them into basically citizens of the British Empire. And this is the reality again. It's interesting because there was direct prohibition of a corporate level with intermarrying and having kids with the natives. And you could take it and look at it from the biblical standpoint, talking about the sons of the gods, the sons of God, the sons of Israel, how they again rework things. But yes, the sons of the gods intermarrying with the locals here on earth and having offsprings and hybrids, and it's a horrible thing. Again, you see the reflection of it here when you look at the corporate adjunct to do not marry the locals, do not have kids with the locals. You're not to intermingle in that way, which people did, and because they're going to do what they're going to do. It's sometimes affairs of the heart, or again, just passions can overrule, and they do. And so there was a lot of that went on. But ultimately, it was the colonial ways that assimilated the indigenous people to the greater degree. And so they also indirectly influenced indigenous territorial control and resource use. Yes, that's what it's all about, resources. There's evidence of mines here on planet Earth that go back hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they were mined by somebody with technology. There's so much evidence, again, of what has been going on. HBC was instrumental in shaping British North American territorial development. After the American Revolution, British lost control of large tracts of land south of the Great Lakes, increasing HBC's importance in retaining British influence in the north. Controlled vast lands that would later become Canada's prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. The company's role in exploration, led by figures like Samuel Hearne and David Thompson, helped map the continent and extend British claims into the Arctic and all the way over to the Pacific. Then the transfer of Rupert's Land to Canada, 1869. By the mid-19th century, Britain wanted to consolidate its North American holdings. Fearing U.S. expansion, in 1869, HBC sold Rupert's Land to the newly formed Dominion of Canada. This led to the Red River Rebellion, led by Louis Riel, as Métis and Indigenous groups resisted the transition of power. And then legacy and decline as a political force. While it continued as a commercial enterprise, its political power declined after the sale of Rupert's Land. However, its legacy remains in the creation of Canada's western provinces, displacement and restructuring of the Indigenous governance systems, and that's the ultimate thing here, is just wiping out the ways of the past and giving the inhabitants that are able to survive and acclimate to the new way of life, give them a new system to embrace, and the economic trade networks that shaped Canada's development. So it was much more than just a fur trading corporation. It was a geopolitical force that helped shape colonial and political landscape of North America. Its influence helped define British territorial claims, influenced Indigenous European relations, and contributed to the formation of modern Canada. Yeah, our 51st state, perhaps. Again, when you look to the maps that we get in the 80s from other sources, and there's so many sources to look to for things like that. Again, you could still get copies of the Council of 300. There's a lot of works out there that have been talking about what really goes on with the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Affairs, et cetera, the fact that there is to be a North American Union, which would include Canada, the United States, and Greenland. As you look at the Hudson Bay Heritage Map, this was a huge piece of land that was owned by a company, a corporation, which in fact is the British Crown, but it was just doing it to do things in a little bit more covert manner. And when we look to the East India Tea Company, oh yeah, exactly the same sort of thing, but totally different place, other side of the planet. And what you have happen is again the loss of so much that was held on by these people in their lifestyle, in their traditions, their stories, their histories, their belief systems. You have to control a belief system and the economic system in order to really, really control people. So, again, the obvious also, the actual, the various things that were taken, not just furs. It was much, much more than just furs going back to Europe. Lots and lots of valuable resources, and especially people. That's the thing. Because now, when you look at it, and you think about corporations having their workforces, and you have nation states that have their citizens, they're literal resources. Many people are aware now of what your social security number really means. It's all. When you look to, it's one thing. When you look to nation states and you look to corporations, again, these people are no longer what they would have labeled themselves as. They're now just part of Canada, which ultimately might be part of a North American Union. And this was huge. 1670, 355 years later, it's still there. All over, and it owned 8 million square kilometers. This was enormous. This is, a massive corporation, company, same thing, because again, it's all serving geopolitical forces. This little plaque is talking about California headquarters of the Hudson Bay Company in 1841. Oh, yes. Hudson Bay Company spy John Jacob Astor. Wait a minute, that Astor, John Jacob Astor? Yeah, when you look at it, and again, there are names that have been changed. Two of the most well-known geopolitical forces in the world today on different continents have the same surname, which is not the surname that they're using right now. They'll change names. Sometimes they don't change names. So, and then the stories are always one of, from poverty to riches. In 1794, a poor German immigrant named John Jacob Astor arrived in New York City. Really, in reality, he was a secret agent for the fabulously wealthy Hudson Bay Company. When you look to it, John Jacob Astor, yes. How about John Jacob Astor IV over here? This is in 1895. Ah, yeah, real estate developer, investor, writer, lieutenant colonel in the Spanish-American War. Prominent member in the Astor family who went down in the Titanic because supposedly he was against the formation of the Federal Reserve. Oh, it's, you can't make this up. The history is all completely a sham. They're giving us these stories because they want to sell us on their greedy ways. Titanic victims, John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, Guggenheim Museum, New York, Isidore Straus, the Federal Reserve Titanic conspiracy, which we've done videos on before, again, and that family, the Red Shields. The Red Shields, because, red is aggressive, right? Red is color of blood, right? Unless you're a blue blood. And there is interesting stories behind that blue blood side too. But they're also the shields because they're out there in the open, because there are others out there that are not out in the open that actually have more power than the ones that we do see. But the ones we do see, we see time and time again. This is Paul Wallace, the fifth kind. He has his own personal channel here as well. Alien invasion, should we be worried? The alien invasion happened thousands of years ago. We are under enemy alien control. And in fact, we are being assimilated into it. We have been assimilated into it. What you see going on against the indigenous peoples is part of that invasion force to wipe out the ways of those that were truly indigenous here, at least for perhaps 50,000 years or more. As ultimately we are all visitors on this planet, but many of us are assimilating, and our bodies do come from this planet. So again, your body, the earth is your mother, truly, in a very, very real physical sense. But I refer back to his conversation with his friend who was a Hawaiian elder, who shared the story of his tribe that said that one day these reptilian beings came, and they came in ships from elsewhere, and they landed down, and they said, you're going to have a new way of living. You're going to have to assimilate to our system. And they gave them a whole monetary system. They gave them quotas, just like with the Roman Empire. Again, you have to pay your taxes back to the system. You work for the system, and you are to survive on what the system gives you. This is the reality that we have here. And so it's a matter of waking up. Ask yourself, should you really be patriotic for any corporation, any country, one and the same when you get down to it? Should you have patriotism? Because they sell the patriotism, and sometimes when it suits their purpose, they'll sow the seeds of division, so you maybe will overthrow one corporation in order to create a bigger, better corporation for the system. It's all one system. It's time that humanity understood the manipulation.
And it's also very overwhelming, and sometimes you just need to focus on puppies and kittens and just take a break.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, guys, come join us on Patreon. We'll have an exclusive going up there later on today. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.